Welcome back to God is Moving SA. You know, friends, the Bible isn't some dusty old book, it's a living, breathing guide for us today. And today, we're diving into a part of it that's just exploding with life, the book of Acts. Have you ever wondered how the early church faced chaos, division, and uncertainty, and still thrived? Back then, they had Roman persecution, cultural clashes, you name it. It makes our modern-day anxieties seem almost small, doesn't it? But here's the thing. In Acts, we see God moving in powerful ways through ordinary people, just like you and me. Those lessons aren't just history. They're a roadmap for us today, tackling everything from stress to the division we see in our world. So stick with me for the next few minutes as we unpack Acts and see how it speaks to our modern struggles. You ready? Let's dive in. You know, friends, one thing that jumps out at you from the book of Acts is the power of community. Acts 2:40-2:47 paints this beautiful picture of the early believers. They were devoted to fellowship, to sharing meals, to praying together. They understood that they were stronger together. And let me tell you, that's a message we need to hear today loud and clear. We live in a world that's more connected online than ever before, but statistically, people are lonelier than ever. 1 in 3 adults report feeling isolated. Think about it. We're working from home, scrolling through social media, constantly bombarded with images of perfect lives, and yet, so many of us are struggling with this deep sense of loneliness. It's heartbreaking. But the answer, my friends, is right there in Acts. Lean in. Find your people. Find your church family, your small group, even just one friend you can pray with, share a meal with, laugh with. It's about genuine connection, not just digital likes and comments. Just last week, I was talking to a friend who was going through a really tough time at work. He was stressed, overwhelmed, just feeling completely burned out. So we got together, shared a meal, prayed together, and just laughed for a while. And you know what he said afterwards? He said, "Man, I needed that." That's the power of community, my friends. It's God's love moving in our mess, reminding us we're not alone. It's about being there for each other, just like those early believers were, through thick and thin. Let's be real, folks. The world can feel pretty chaotic these days. We've got economic stress, crime right here in South Africa, global unrest. It's heavy stuff. I'll admit, there are days when I see the headlines and just want to crawl back in bed and pull the covers over my head. But then, I remember what we see in Acts April 23rd, 31. These early Christians, they were facing persecution, threats, even imprisonment. And you know what they did? They prayed. And not just little polite prayers, they prayed bold, audacious prayers. They prayed for boldness to keep sharing the gospel, for God's power to move in the midst of opposition. See, bold faith doesn't mean ignoring the storm. It means speaking directly into it. It's about taking our concerns, our fears, our anxieties to God and saying, "Okay, God, this is what I'm facing. I need your help." Just last month, our community was hit with another power cut. It seemed like every other week, the lights were going out. Now I know it sounds like a small thing, but it was frustrating, disruptive, and frankly, a little scary. But instead of complaining, we decided to pray. We prayed for strength, for patience, for God to provide. And you know what? Neighbors started helping neighbors. We shared candles, checked in on each other, and even had a few impromptu candle-lit dinners. It was amazing to see how God used that situation to bring us closer together. So my challenge to you today is this. Pray bold. Don't be afraid to bring your big, messy, complicated requests to God. He can handle them. And you might be surprised by how He chooses to move. Chapter 3. Finding Strength in the Dark. You know, one of the things I love about the book of Acts is its honesty. These weren't perfect people living perfect lives. They faced real struggles, just like we do. Take Paul and Silas, for example. In Acts 16, we find them thrown in prison, beaten, their feet chained. I mean, talk about a bad day. But here's the amazing part. At midnight, what are they doing? They're singing, praising God. Now, I don't know about you, but if I was in their shoes, singing would be the last thing on my mind. But their response teaches us a powerful lesson about resilience. We live in a world where mental health struggles are on the rise. Depression rates have skyrocketed, especially here in South Africa and around the world. I'll be honest with you, friends. I've had nights when the weight of the world felt so heavy, I didn't know how I'd get through it. But Acts reminds us that we don't have to have it all together to worship. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply sing. Put on your favorite worship song, lift your hands, and just let it out. You don't have to feel it at first. Sometimes you've got to praise your way through the darkness. I remember one particularly tough day I put on that song, Waymaker, and just started singing along. Now, it didn't magically fix everything, but it shifted something inside me. It reminded me that God is still on the throne, even when I can't see the way forward. And you know what? He showed up. So, if you're going through a dark time right now, remember Paul and Silas. Remember that God is with you even in the darkest night, and sometimes the most powerful prayer is a song. Chapter 4. Discovering your God-given purpose. Friends, we live in a world that's constantly vying for our attention. Screens, jobs, social media. It's easy to get caught up in the hustle and lose sight of what truly matters. And that leaves so many people feeling lost, purposeless, unsure of their place in this world. But here's the good news. The Book of Acts reminds us that every single one of us has a God-given purpose. We see it in the life of Saul, who was radically transformed from a persecutor of Christians to the Apostle Paul, one of the greatest evangelists of all time. Talk about a change of direction. Saul's story teaches us that our purpose isn't just about us, it's about how God wants to use us to impact others. It's about being willing to step out of our comfort zones to say yes to God even when it seems scary or uncertain. You see, my friends, there's a reason why you were created with the unique gifts, talents, and passions that you have. God has a plan for your life, and it's bigger than you can imagine. I started mentoring a young man in my neighborhood a few months ago. It started simply just chatting, sharing stories from the Bible. Nothing fancy, but last week he looked at me and said, "You make me feel like I matter." That, my friends, is God moving. Your purpose might not be to preach to thousands, it might be to love your neighbor, to mentor a child, to volunteer at your local soup kitchen. It's about being a light in the darkness, sharing God's love in practical, tangible ways. So take a step this week, volunteer your time, offer a helping hand, share a kind word with someone who needs it. You might be surprised by the impact you can have, and the joy it brings to your own life. Outro: keep God's movement going. You see, friends, Acts isn't some ancient history lesson. It's a living, breathing testament to the power of God working in and through ordinary people, just like you and me. It's a reminder that community beats loneliness, bold faith faces chaos head-on, resilience helps us find strength in the dark, and discovering our purpose lifts us up and spills over into the lives of others. The same God who moved mountains in the Book of Acts is still moving today. He's moving in our families, our communities, our nation. He's moving through you and me, so let's not just sit back and watch, let's join him. Try one thing this week, just one thing, inspired by the Book of Acts. Pray a bold prayer, sing a song of praise when you're feeling down, reach out to someone who needs a friend, and if you're joining us online, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss out on what God is doing next. And hey, why not share this message with someone who needs to hear it? Let's keep this movement of God's love and power going. Thanks for watching God is Moving SA. See you next time, fam. God bless.